Hello everyone, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Dr. Mahavir Narwal, Professor Department of Commerce, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra. In this module, the topic for discussion is the second part of organizational conflict. Outlines of this module are learning objectives, introduction, theories or approaches of conflict, types or level of conflict, resolution of conflicts, stimulating conflict. First of all, what are the objectives of organizational conflict? The basic objectives are to understand the theories of conflict, to understand how to resolve the conflict, to know the levels of conflicts, to know about stimulating conflicts. Earlier, we have discussed the meaning, characteristics, sources, process, functional and dysfunctional aspects of conflict and conflict management. In this module, we will discuss the theories on conflict, stimulating conflict, types or level of conflicts. Conflict is present everywhere in the organization. Now let us discuss the theories of conflict. Conflict is an inevitable part of the organization. From top level management to small informal groups of individuals, organizational conflict is present everywhere. There are three different views on organizational conflict. Earlier, it was believed that conflict was a negative thing and therefore it had to be avoided. However, with continuous studies and researches in the field of organizational behavior and management, that thinking gradually changed. These views advocate the same concept that there are different types of conflicts and not all of them have to be bad and dysfunctional. These three different perspectives are commonly referred as the traditional approach, the human relations approach, the interactionist approach. First of all, we will discuss the traditional approach. The traditional approach in organizational conflict is the earliest approach of the conflict. It was first developed in late 30s and early 40s and the most linear and simple approach towards conflict. According to the traditional view, any conflict in an organization is bad, negative and harmful. Although conflicts are of different types, but according to traditional view, conflict is dysfunctional and destructive. It suggests that organizational conflict must be avoided by identifying the malfunctioning causes. Moreover, the traditional view on organizational conflict identifies poor communication, disagreement, lack of trust among individuals, and failure of manager to be responsive to their employees' needs as the main causes and reasons of organizational conflict. Second approach, the human relations approach. From the late 40s and mid 70s, the human relations view dominated the topic of organizational conflict. In that period, the fields of management and organizational behavior were expanding. The traditional view was challenged by various studies and surveys, and therefore the human relations view on organizational conflict presented a significantly different perspective on the topic. The human relations view on organizational conflict primarily teaches us to accept conflict. It identifies conflict as an important aspect of any organization which simply can't be eliminated. More importantly, unlike the traditional view, the human relations view doesn't discard conflict as a negative and destructive thing. Instead, it says that an organizational conflict may be beneficial for the individuals, groups, and the organizational in general. Moreover, this perspective even suggests that organizational conflict within groups may even lead to a better group performance and outcome. The interactionist approach. With passing time and further studies in the field of organizational behavior, people started to accept conflict as an integral and somewhat positive aspect. The interactionist view on organizational conflict extends that concept. When the human relations view accepted organizational conflict as an important part, the interactionist view on organizational conflict takes the same concept one step further. It suggests that an ongoing minimum level of conflict is actually necessary and beneficial for a group. In the view of interactionist, if there is no conflict in the organization, then it becomes inadaptable, inflexible, static, and non-responsive. If the conflict of minimum level is there in the organization, it will be helpful for the organization. A minimum level of conflict maintains competition, self-evaluation, and creativity among the individual in the organization. It will help to increase the performance of the group as well as the performance of an individual. Individuals will give creative solution. However, to note that even interactionist view doesn't claim that every type of conflict is beneficial and healthy. It clearly states that only the functional and constructive forms of conflict help the group, while dysfunctional or destructive forms of conflict should be avoided. Now, types or level of conflict. The first is intrapersonal conflict. Intrapersonal conflict is unique among the types of conflict because it occurs within an individual. This sort of conflict is present wherever individual behaves in a way that is in direct contradiction to how they really think or feel. For example, interpersonal conflict is a person trying drugs or alcohol in a social environment even though they don't really want to do it. In short, if you find yourself doing something that your conscience says is morally wrong or what you don't feel comfortable doing, then you are experiencing an intrapersonal conflict. Intrapersonal conflict is of two types: goal conflict and role conflict. First of all, let us discuss goal conflict. This type of conflict takes place due to the existence of two or more competing goals in an individual. It occurs when two or more motives block each other. This restricts an individual from taking a decision about the goals to be achieved. Three types of goal conflicts have been identified. These are approach conflict. It occurs when an individual has to choose between two equally desirable but incompatible goals. For example, a person has received invitation from two friends at the exact same time and he wants to go to both places but have to make a choice between them. This situation leads to conflict. It is also known as double approach conflict. Second is approach avoidance conflict. According to this approach, when negative and positive effects both happens only for one event or one goal, then that make the goal attractive or not attractive. For example, there are both negative and positive features in a marriage. Companionship, togetherness, and sharing memories are some positive features of marriage, and difficulty with in-laws, final considerations, argument, and avoidance may be the negative region. If there are positive effects, then the goal or events in the organization may be influenced, and if there are negative effects, then the goal may also be influenced. When there are negative and positive characteristics, then there may be conflict. It may confuse the decision maker that should be moved to objectives or not. Avoidance conflict. Avoidance conflicts occur when an individual has to make choice between two or more undesirable alternatives. For example, you are facing a problem of toothache and hate to go to dentist. Here you have two negative situations where you have to make a decision to continue with the pain, which is horrifying, or going to the dentist, which you also hate. You are stuck in between these two things that you don't like but end up doing either. Role conflict, the term role conflict refers to a clash between two or more of a person's role or incompatible features within the same role. These incompatibilities can consist of differing expectations, requirements, beliefs, and attitudes. People in everyday life enact multiple roles simultaneously. For example, Mr. Ram might be a boss, an employee, a son, a father, and so on. Often, these roles are activated concurrently. Different roles are sometimes incompatible. However, the requirements of one role can clash with those of another. In addition, contradictory requirements within the same role can produce a role conflict. There may be four types of role conflict. Intrasender role conflict. The intrasender role conflict arises when a person is asked to perform a job which is beyond his capabilities and not providing the adequate resources required for the completion of the job. Intersender role conflict. Intersender role conflict arises when two or more people have opposite expectations from the role of a person. Person role conflict. Person role conflict take place when there are incompatible components within the same role. For example, Sohan is a school teacher who wants to be liked by his students. It is noticed that when he has a good rapport with his students, they participate more in class and trust him. This makes teaching much more fun and interesting for him. Unfortunately, since he is a teacher, he also has to incorporate discipline and rules into his classroom. Without them, the students would never take him seriously. In his role as a teacher, Son has to walk the line between being friendly and open as well as authoritative. Interpersonal role conflict. Interpersonal role conflict occurs when the expectations from two separate roles clash. An example again. We already know that Sohan works full time as a teacher, but he also is a father to 4 children. Sohan decided to become a teacher because he knew that he would get summers off from work to spend with his kids. However, sometimes during the school year, his schedule can be really difficult. He has to assist with after school tutoring and tends to have a lot of homework to grade after hours. This at times takes him away from spending time with his own family. In this situation, Sohan is experiencing a conflict between his role as a teacher and his role as a father. Now, interpersonal conflict. Interpersonal conflict takes place between two individuals. It describes those clashes that occur when individuals are working or living in the same locations are unable to come together in order to accomplish a goal or objective. Sources of interpersonal conflict include the lack of a common background, personality issues, and differences in lived experience. Interpersonal conflict often occurs in the workplace and may need resolution helped by an individual who is external to the organization. Interpersonal conflict can also occur between roommates, team members, or even domestic partners. Interpersonal conflict is distinguished from intergroup conflict in that it takes place between two individuals rather than many. Intragroup conflict. Intragroup conflict occurs among numerous members of the group in organization. Perhaps the most common symptom of intra-group conflict is severe lapses in communication. As a result of this, the group will be unable to come together to accomplish goals and objectives. When there is a team, these types of conflicts occur between the people of the team. When misunderstanding and incompatibilities are there among group members, it is called intra-group conflict. If there are more conflicts between the group members, then there is a need to settle the conflict and guidance is required from a separate party. Intergroup conflict. This conflict occurs between two or more groups and their members. This may involve physical violence, interpersonal discord, and psychological tension. When there is a misunderstanding between two or more teams in the organization, it is called intergroup conflict. For example, due to different interests and goals of finance and sales department, these departments may come in conflict with each other. To establish its own identity, a group can set boundaries. Also, competition may be the reason for intergroup conflict. There are other factors too which increases the conflicts in an organization. Some conditions have been identified to explain the intergroup conflict. Status struggle. When a group improves its status in the organization, on the other side it seems threat to the other group and the conflicts occur. In terms of working conditions, rewards, privileges, and job assignment, one group may feel that their group is not being treated same like other group. Second, task interdependence. The chances for this type of conflict arises in the organization if one group is depend on another group. There can be conflicts regarding decision making, resource allocation, etc. Competition for resources. Today, most of the organizations don't have more resources. They are left with scarce resources. So, in the organization, the conflict may arise due to these resources like personnel, supplies, support services, space and budget, etc. Conflict is a normal part of any healthy relationship. After all, two people can't be expected to agree on everything all the time. When conflict is mismanaged, it can cause great harm to a relationship. But when handled in a respectful, positive way, conflict provides an opportunity to strengthen the bond between two people. By learning these skills for conflict resolution, you can keep your personal and professional relationships strong and growing. Conflict resolution is the process of resolving a dispute or a conflict by meeting at least some of each side's needs and addressing their interests. Sometimes to resolve a conflict, there is a need of two approaches, interest-based approach and power-based approach. There are a number of powerful strategies for conflict resolution, like collaborating. Collaboration is that situation where two or more parties work jointly towards a common goal. In this technique, you will discuss that issues with all parties to find a solution considering multiple viewpoints and agreed upon by all. The collaborating strategy is an excellent way to merge insights from people with different perspectives on a problem, and the results can be a strong commitment to the solution from each side. This strategy matches the needs of the individuals to build commitment and reach consensus. This technique is considered as a win-win approach. Compromising. Compromise means settlement of differences by mutual concessions. It is a midway approach. In this strategy, managers take suggestions from both sides and try to make a compromise. Both parties involved in the conflict gain or lose something, so this solution partially satisfied both parties. Often achieving a compromise can be done more quickly than collaboration. It is lose-lose approach. Problem solving. In the problem solving technique, conflict will be treated as a problem for which the project manager has to find a solution. The project manager will conduct root cause analysis of the reasons for the conflict, encourage open discussions to allow parties to express their areas of disagreement, then arrive at a solution. Avoiding. In this conflict resolution technique, managers avoid the conflict, often with the hope that the issue will disappear on its own. This is most often used when the conflict is not a large issue and when there are other issues in the forefront. Sometimes not dealing with the conflict through avoidance can result in the issue growing rather than disappearing. Forcing. In this technique, an individual firmly pursues his or her own concern, despite the resistance of the other person. This may involve pushing one viewpoint at the expense of another or maintaining firm resistance to another person's action. Forcing a win-lose situation. However, forcing is very useful when you need to resolve a conflict in the shortest possible time. Smoothing. In this technique, you give more concern to other parties rather than yours. This technique can be used when you need a temporary solution to the problem. The drawback of this technique is that it may weaken your position as a leader. Therefore, you should avoid using this technique to solve issues. Be willing to forgive. Resolving conflict is impossible if you are unwilling or unable to forgive. Resolution lies in releasing the urge to punish, which can never compensate for our losses and only adds to our injury by further depleting and draining our lives. Quickly relieve stress. It is also helpful in resolving conflict. The capacity to remain relaxed and focused in tense situations is a vital aspect of conflict resolution. If you do not know how to stay centered and in control of yourself, you may be becoming emotionally overwhelmed in changing situations. The best way to rapidly and reliably relieve stress is through the senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But each person responds differently to sensory input. So you need to find things that are smoothing to you. Recognize and manage your emotions. Recognizing and managing the emotions also play a role in reducing conflict. Emotional awareness is the key to understanding yourself and others. If you don't know how you feel or why you feel, then you will not be able to communicate effectively or smooth over disagreements. Although knowing your own feelings may seem simple, many people ignore or try to sedate strong emotions like anger, sadness, and fear. But your ability to handle conflict depends on being connected to these feelings. Stimulating conflict. Conflict is required for certain challenges and changes in the organization under some circumstances. Some techniques by like Robbins, which work out during conflicts, play on status differences. When in organization, senior staff is ignored for some responsibility and the responsibility given to the junior staff, it is requiring senior staff to work harder to show that they are better. Encourage competition. Competition is important to the organization if conflict enhanced properly. New ideas can be generated by competition. Incentives, recognition, and status enhancement can create the competition. Appoint managers who support change. Some managers with nature of authoritarian are very conservative and don't like change. So in organization, there should be managers who favor change and who support change and innovation. Manipulate scarcity. If the groups and individuals compete for the resources, it would be beneficial for the organization because resource will be the reason for the fight and the group and individuals properly utilize the resources and give their best. Summary: conflict is required for certain challenges and changes in the organization under some circumstances. The capacity to remain relaxed and focused in tense situations is a vital aspect of conflict resolution. Conflict is an inevitable part of organizations, from top level management to small informal groups of individuals. Organizational conflict is present everywhere. Intrapersonal conflict is unique among the types of conflict because it occurs within an individual. If conflict is mismanaged, it can harm to relationship, but if handled properly in a positive way, then it can strengthen the bond between two parties. Now, in the end of this module, points to ponder. There are scarce resources in the organization. This causes group conflicts. The superior authority resolves the conflict by giving a decision, and the decision will be accepted because of a decision of high rank authority. Where dysfunctional aspects of conflict don't happen, management tries to build that types of environment. According to the traditional view, any conflict in an organization is bad, negative, and harmful. According to interactionist approach, minimum level of conflict is actually beneficial for the group because it maintains a certain level of creativity, self-evaluation, and competition among the individuals. Thank you.